Picture a damp summer camp where the scent of rain-soaked pines mingles with the echoes of childhood laughter. As old friends gather for a nostalgic reunion, a mysterious death disrupts the fragile peace, leaving everyone a suspect. In the Summer Camp Alibi, hidden truths surface amidst whispered secrets and buried pasts. Settle in. This weekend of memories may just reveal more than anyone bargained for. The camp had been built for children's noise, and it held their echoes the way a lake held cold. Rowan Finch stepped out of her car and into air that smelled of wet needles and old smoke. The pines rose in crowded ranks, their trunks dark with recent rain, their upper branches moving with the slow, patient sweep of wind. Somewhere close by, unseen water lapped at a shore, the sound small but insistent, as if the lake were counting. The gravel lot was half reclaimed by moss. A hand-painted sign leaned against a boulder. "Welcome back, Hawthorn Camp, Nostalgia Weekend." Beneath the cheerful letters, the paint had cracked along the grain like fine wrinkles. Rowan adjusted the strap of her overnight bag and walked toward the mess hall. The building looked smaller than it had in memory, or perhaps Rowan's memories had been made large by the way childhood enlarged everything. The porch boards creaked under her boots, the screen door side open. Warmth met her first, wood heat and coffee, and then voices softened by the high rafters. A handful of adults stood in loose clusters. It was the oddest sensation, faces with grown lines, grown bones, wearing the camp's old names like borrowed jackets. Lorna Pritchard saw Rowan immediately and came forward with the practiced ease of someone who had spent her youth ushering shy campers into games. "Rowan Finch," Lorna said, smiling as if they'd parted yesterday. "The camp's most conscientious counselor. You still look like you'd make everyone line up by cabin and wash their hands." Rowan returned the smile, careful with it. Lorna had always been like this, bright, decisive, a person who made plans and expected the world to comply. "And you still talk like the camp is a living thing," Rowan said. Lorna's eyes flicked briefly past Rowan's shoulder to the trees beyond the porch. "Maybe it is," she replied. "Maybe it remembers who loved it and who used it." The comment was light on its surface and heavy underneath. Rowan filed it away. Therapy had made her good at hearing what people hid inside ordinary words. Lorna clasped Rowan's forearm, a gesture of closeness that had a leader's ownership in it. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wanted someone here who could keep the weekend from turning into a drunken reunion or a grievance parade. You can do a closing circle tomorrow. Gentle, not saccharine." "That's why I'm here," Rowan said. "Good." Lorna's smile sharpened. "Because I have a few things I need, steadied." Rowan was about to ask what she meant when Lorna swept her toward the room like a current. "Everyone," Lorna called. "Rowan Finch. She's the reason half of us learned to swim without panicking." Introductions came in quick, telling snapshots. Peter Carden shook Rowan's hand with a careful grip. He wore a camp sweatshirt that looked new, and a wedding band that caught the light when his thumb rubbed over it, again and again as if checking it was still there. "Board Treasurer," he said as if the title mattered even here. Grant Ives was broader than the boy Rowan remembered. He rolled a coin across his knuckles and then stopped, embarrassed by the habit. "Didn't think I'd ever come back," he admitted. Elise Marrow's voice was warm as she said hello, but her eyes were not. She smoothed the sleeves of her cardigan, flattening wrinkles that weren't there. "I'm leading the sing-along," she said, because apparently I still remember every chorus. June Caldwell offered a polite smile and, without seeming to, took in Rowan's hands, her face, her posture, as if she were reading vital signs. "Wellness coach now," she said. "I used to be an ER nurse. I'm hard to shock." Silas Wren leaned against a support beam, a cigarette tucked behind one ear like a period costume. He didn't light it. He flicked invisible ash from the air anyway. "Writer," he said, "and a person who appreciates a good lock-in." And then Tam Keene, who had not been a camper at all. Tam belonged to the place in a different way. She had the sun-browned forearms and grounded stance of someone who fixed what other people broke. She wiped her palms on her jeans after shaking Rowan's hand, as if the skin didn't like lingering contact. "Caretaker," Tam said. "Grounds, repairs, keeping the mice out of the pantry mostly." "Tam runs the whole place," Lorna said. "We're guests in her world." Tam's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "The camp runs itself," she said. "It just needs someone to listen." Lorna clapped her hands once. All right, tradition weekend, she said. No phones. I want us here fully. So, she produced a metal lockbox from beneath a counter and set it down with a dull thud. It looked like something meant to hold petty cash or ammunition. Phones go in, Lorna said. I'm not asking, I'm declaring. We'll have them back tomorrow after the closing circle. There were murmurs, annoyed, amused, resigned. Grant grimaced. June hesitated. Silas's mouth curved as if he found the idea theatrically appealing. Rowan watched. People complied because the setting asked them to. The camp made adults want to behave like campers again, and Lorna had always been skilled at leveraging that. One by one, phones disappeared into the box. Lorna clicked the latch shut and pocketed the key. Schedules printed, she added, tapping a stack of papers. Dinner at 7. Campfire sing-along at 9. At the bell, we'll do the memory candle, just a moment, nothing hokey. Then tomorrow, Rowan will lead our closing circle. She paused, and her gaze went past them toward the lake path that sloped down between pines. And one rule, Lorna said. No one goes down to the lake after dark alone. I mean it. The dock boards are slick and the shoreline's tricky. We'll move together. Tam's eyes tightened. The culvert's already running high, she said. If the weather turns, the road floods. We could be stuck till morning. Lorna waved that away as if weather were a rumor. Then we'll be stuck, she said. The camp will keep us. Rowan took her schedule and turned it over. The paper smelled faintly of ink and camp dust. She tried to place why a small unease had begun to gather in her throat. It came when Lorna said casually, as if it were nothing. After dinner, I'll set up the closing ritual by the lake. I have some paperwork to finish, too. Just camp business. Paperwork, Peter echoed, and his thumb rubbed his wedding band harder. Lorna's smile did not soften. Yes, she said. Paperwork. Rowan followed Tam outside a little later to help carry firewood. The sky had lowered into a gray lid. The wind smelled like rain. As they walked past the bell tower, Rowan looked up out of habit. The tower stood on 4 posts at the edge of the clearing, a simple platform with a brass bell that had called generations of campers to meals, drills, and games. The bell rope hung down from the platform, looped and tied off around a cleat. Rowan's eyes caught on it with a small jolt. It was too new. Not the rope itself. Rope was rope, and in the wrong light, everything could look clean. But the braid had a faint synthetic sheen. The lower portion was free of fraying, free of the gray softness that came from years of hands and weather. It stood out against the tower's wood, which was weathered to the color of old bone. Rowan glanced at Tam. Did you replace the bell rope? She asked. Tam shifted the weight of the firewood bundle. Had to, she said. Old one was shedding like an old dog. Lorna didn't want anyone getting rope burned during the bell ceremony. When? This afternoon, Tam replied. She had a coil delivered, told me to swap the lower section quick before folks arrived. Said it was part of the weekend, no surprises. Tam's tone suggested she found the request silly, but not suspicious. Rowan kept looking up at the rope, at the clean braid and the fresh knot that joined it to the older, darker line above. The knot was neat. Too neat for a rushed afternoon. On the ground near the fire ring, a thin cord ran low through the needles, half buried. Rowan might not have noticed it at all if her eye hadn't been trained by years of watching anxious hands and nervous feet. She assumed it was a guy line for a lantern stand and stepped over it. Tam saw her look. Old camp lines, Tam said. You'll find rope everywhere once you start looking. Rowan nodded, and in her mind she set that down beside the bell rope's sheen and the too clean knot. Rituals were made of small details, and sometimes so were lies. Dinner in the mess hall was hearty and a little sad, the way a group meal could be when everyone was eating against their own memories. The stew was thick with potatoes. The bread tasted faintly of smoke. Rain began during dessert, tapping the windows like impatient fingers. After dinner, people drifted. Rowan watched them scatter into the roles they remembered from childhood. Peter organizing dishes with too much authority, Elise humming as she gathered songbooks, Grant lingering by the doorway as if weighing whether to go outside, Silas making notes on a folded napkin with a pen he kept behind his ear, June offering to help Tam with the generator. Lorna disappeared with a lantern in hand. Rowan caught her at the porch steps. "Do you need help?" she asked. Lorna's smile returned bright as a lamp. "No," she said. "I need quiet. Besides, you'll be busy later. You're the professional." "With circles," Rowan said. "With people," Lorna corrected, and then she was gone down the lake path, lantern bobbing between the trunks. The campfire sing-along began as if the weather had been planned. Rain eased to a mist. The fire crackled and snapped. Wet pine needles released a sharp scent that made Rowan's chest tighten with nostalgia. They sat in a rough ring around the fire pit. Tam had arranged log benches and folding chairs. Elise stood with a guitar, her face warmed by firelight, her hands steady now that they had something to do. Rowan took a seat where she could see everyone without making it obvious. The therapist's habit, the counselor's habit, the old camp counselor's habit. She noted tells without judgment. Peter's thumb rubbing his ring. Grant's coin rolling, stopped, started again. June's eyes moving from face to face as if checking for pallor. Silas's cigarette tapped against his knee, unlit. They sang the first few songs awkwardly, adults tripping over choruses like children in borrowed shoes. Then the rhythm returned. Elise's voice lifted. The camp's old call-and response found its way back into their mouths. Rowan relaxed, a fraction. Then, somewhere above them, the bell rang once. The sound cut through the singing like a knife through cloth. Everyone stopped. The bell tower stood a short distance away, its platform black against the gray sky. No one was near it. No one had moved. Rowan could see all 6 attendees around the fire ring in the same instant, their faces turned upwards, startled. Grant sat frozen, coin caught between fingers. Elise's guitar chord died in a soft twang. Peter stared as if he'd been accused. June's brows rose, her mouth parting slightly. Silas's cigarette slipped from his fingers into the dirt. Tam was the first to speak. "That rope's tied off," she said, as if stating it might undo the wrongness. "Wind," June suggested, but the bell had been a deliberate strike, not a jitter. "That bell doesn't ring itself," Tam replied. Her voice had gone flat. Practical. Unamused. Peter cleared his throat. "Maybe someone's playing a joke," he said. "Who?" Elise asked, and her voice was too sharp for a song leader, Lorna, Rowan thought. The idea came and went. Lorna would have loved the theatrical timing. But Lorna was not there. Lorna was, according to her own plan, down by the lake, setting up and finishing paperwork. Rowan listened to the rain, to the fire's hiss, to the lake's distant breathing. The bell had rung from an impossible place at an impossible time. They tried to laugh it off because adults did not like feeling like children again in the wrong way. Elise started another song, her voice slightly strained. But the ring had changed something. It had anchored a feeling in the air, that they were being watched by the camp itself, by the tower, by whatever held the rope. When the sing-along ended, the fire had burned down to coals. Mist rose from wet ground. Elise closed the guitar case with careful hands. "Lorna should be here," Peter said, as if saying it would summon her. Grant stood. "She's probably setting up some candle thing," he muttered. "She'll come." June checked her watch, then remembered the weekend's premise and let her hand fall. "It's been an hour," she said. "If she went to the lake alone—" "She told us not to," Elise said. "She told us the rule." Tam's face tightened. "Rules don't stop people who think they're the exception," she said. Rowan rose. "We go together," she said, and her voice came out with more authority than she intended. They took lanterns. Tam led the way down the path, boots sure on wet roots. The lake appeared between the trees like a sheet of dark metal. The dock boards gleamed with moisture. No lantern, no candle, no Lorna. Tam's radio crackled when she tried it, the ranger station faint and distant. "We're getting weather," a bored voice said. "Road's going to flood. If it does, deputies won't come in till daylight." Tam swore under her breath and turned her lantern toward the buildings by the shore. The canoe shed sat a little apart, its doors facing the water. The structure was simple, old cedar planks, a sloped roof, a hasp and padlock at the doors. The padlock hung there now, but the hasp was not engaged. It dangled like a prop in a stage set. Tam frowned. "I lock this," she said. Rowan felt a small, cold tightening in her stomach. "Maybe you forgot," she offered, because it was the kindest possibility. Tam's eyes flicked to Rowan. "I don't forget locks," she said. She pulled the doors open. Lantern lights spilled inside onto stacked canoes and hanging paddles. The shed smelled of wet cedar and old varnish. A drip sounded somewhere, regular as a clock. Lorna lay on the floor beside a workbench, half under the shadow of an overturned canoe rack. Her face was turned slightly away, her hair spread dark against the wood. One arm was bent at an angle that made Rowan's skin prickle. It was not grotesque, but it was wrong in the clean and the unmistakable way of a body that had stopped belonging to itself. For a beat, no one moved. The camp held them in that stillness as if it were part of a ritual. Elise made a thin sound, and June reached automatically for her elbow, steadying her like a nurse steadying a patient. Grant stared and said nothing. Peter's hand went to his ring, thumb grinding hard. Silas took a step forward and then stopped, as if his own curiosity had collided with something real. Rowan crouched at the threshold without crossing it, because even in shock her mind reached for order. She looked for blood and found none obvious. She looked for broken glass and found none. She saw only a faint bruise line at Lorna's hairline and the impression of a blunt impact. "Don't touch anything," Rowan said, surprising herself. Tam's lantern hand trembled once and then steadied. "Road's going to flood," she said. "We may be here till morning." Above them, beyond the trees, the bell tower stood in the dark. Its rope hung silent. But Rowan could still feel the bell's single note in her bones, like a wrong word spoken too clearly. They moved back to the mess hall in a tight group, because leaving someone alone felt unthinkable now. Tam locked the canoe shed from the outside with shaking hands and then rechecked the hasp twice, as if the metal could reassure her. Inside the mess hall, generator light made the room feel slightly unreal. Shadows jumped at the corners. Wet coats hung from pegs, dripping onto the floor in small, steady puddles. Rowan sat at the long table and forced herself to breathe slowly. Her training was for grief, for panic, for the disorientation that came after loss. It had not been for murder in a place that felt like childhood. Still, people needed something to hold. "We go through the hour," Rowan said. "From after dinner until we found her. We do it calmly. We do it once." Peter's mouth tightened. "We should wait for the police," he said. "The police can't get in," Tam replied. "Culvert's already running. If it floods, we're on our own till daylight." June's gaze went to the lockbox on the counter. "Our phones are in there," she said. Silas gave a dry laugh. "So we've made a perfect period piece," he murmured. Then, seeing Elise's face, he shut up. Rowan's eyes went to the lockbox. Lorna had the key. Lorna was now in the canoe shed. The box was, for the moment, a sealed artifact of a choice made for atmosphere. Rowan began. "After dinner, Lorna left with a lantern," she said. "She said she was setting up the closing ritual by the lake and finishing paperwork. Where did everyone else go?" Tam spoke first. "Generator," she said. "I checked fuel because the weather was coming in. June helped." June nodded. "About 20 minutes, she said. Then I went to the kitchen to make tea." Elise lifted her chin. "I got the guitar and songbooks," she said. "I was in the mess hall most of the time." Grant rolled his coin between fingers and then shoved it in his pocket as if ashamed. "I went outside," he admitted, "by the lake path, for air." Peter's thumb rubbed his ring. "I cleared dishes," he said, "and I checked the office, the donation box, routine." Silas shrugged. "I walked," he said. "I can't sit still. I was taking notes." Rowan nodded, not because she trusted the answers, but because the act of hearing them was the beginning of structure. "And then we came to the fire ring," Rowan said. "All of us, together." They agreed on that. The sing-along had been public, communal. If someone had left, it would have been seen. "The bell rang," Elise whispered. Rowan's mind returned to that sound, the impossibility of it, the way it had made them all look up. "Show me the bell rope," Rowan said. Tam looked at her sharply. "Now?" "Now," Rowan said. "Before daylight changes things, before rain erases whatever it hasn't already." They walked back outside in a cluster, lanterns swinging. The bell tower loomed. Rain had eased to a mist again, but the air was wet enough that Rowan's hair curled at the edges. Tam stepped to the base of the tower and put a hand on the rope. "Tied off," she muttered and tugged lightly. The bell did not ring. The rope was cleated and slack below the cleat. Rowan looked up at the knot that joined the newer braid to the older line above. It was neat. Fresh. She leaned closer and saw something else. A small splice point where a thinner line had been woven into the braid and then led away, disappearing into shadow. "Tam," Rowan said softly, "did you splice anything into this rope?" Tam's brow furrowed. "No," she said. "I swapped the lower section. That's it." Rowan stepped back and crouched, sweeping her lantern beam across the ground. Pine needles glittered with moisture. And there, low and subtle, was the thin cord she had stepped over earlier, running from the base of the tower toward the fire ring, half buried like a root. Her stomach tightened. The cord was not a guy line. It was a pull line. Rowan followed it with her light. It threaded between rocks and under needles, looping around the base of a log bench at the fire ring. The line was placed where a foot could catch it without a hand ever touching it, where a shift of weight could pull it taut. "That's how the bell rang," Rowan murmured. June's voice came out carefully. "From here?" "From here," Rowan said. "Someone didn't have to leave. Someone didn't have to stand. They only had to pull this." Tam's face had gone pale beneath the lantern light. "I didn't do that," she said. Rowan believed her. Not because Tam was pure, but because Tam's surprise was too clean. She had been proud of her locks. She would have been proud of her rope work, too. "Who knew you replaced the rope?" Rowan asked. Tam swallowed. "Lorna," she said. "She asked for it." Peter's thumb stopped on his ring for a fraction of a second, then resumed. Grant stared at the cord as if it might bite him. "So the bell was a trick," he said. "Why?" Rowan stood and looked from face to face. The campfire ring, now dark, seemed suddenly like a stage. "Because it anchors time," Rowan said. "It makes you remember a moment as if it proves something. If you heard the bell at 9, if you all heard it together, then you assume whoever it was meant to call was alive at 9. Elise's lips parted. "Lorna," she whispered. Rowan nodded. "It suggests she was alive after the sing-along began," Rowan said. "It suggests a window of innocence for whoever wanted it." They returned to the mess hall with that new knowledge weighing on them. On the long table, someone had set Lorna's tote bag down. It was canvas with a camp logo stitched on. June placed a camp logo matchbook beside it, damp at the edges as if it had been rained on or worse. The matchbook was distinctive, dark green with a gold bell printed on the front. Rowan didn't remember seeing it earlier. Grant did. "That's mine," June said suddenly, and then corrected herself. "I mean, I found it." Rowan's head turned. June held the matchbook between two fingers as if it might stain her. "It was in Grant's jacket pocket when I helped him look for his keys," she said. "You know, when we were searching and he was checking his pockets." Grant's face flushed. "My pocket?" he snapped. "I didn't." June's expression stayed composed, but her eyes had the practiced steadiness of someone used to being believed. "It was there," she said. Rowan watched Grant's hands. Coin, pocket. The pocket June meant was his outer jacket pocket, waxed canvas, the sort of jacket a man wore outdoors because it promised to keep rain out. "Your pocket was dry," Rowan said, not a question. Grant blinked. "Of course it was," he said. "It's waxed." Rowan held June's gaze. "And the matchbook is wet," she said. "How wet?" June hesitated a fraction. "Damp," she said. Rowan extended her palm. June placed the matchbook into it. It was more than damp. The cardboard had swelled. The striker strip was dark with water. A faint smell rose from it. Not just rain, but lake water. That mineral tang, that faint algae note that clung to wet wood near shore. Rowan felt a chill. The matchbook hadn't been simply rained on. It had been soaked, and then placed somewhere dry. The camp's generator hummed steadily, indifferent. Outside, the wind moved through pines like a whispering crowd. Rowan looked down at the swollen matchbook in her hand and thought, someone is not only killing, someone is arranging what we will think we remember. Tam insisted they wait until morning to re-enter the canoe shed. "We've already got one body," she said, voice tight. "I'm not getting another because someone slips on wet boards." Rowan agreed, but sleep did not come. The mess hall had a few bunk rooms off the kitchen, a concession to the weekend's premise, and they lay down in clothes that still smelled of smoke and rain. The night stretched thin and restless. Rowan woke more than once to the sound of the generator, to the groan of wind, to the sensation that the bell's note was still vibrating somewhere. At one point she heard footsteps in the hall, light, careful. She waited, listening. The footsteps passed. A door clicked softly. In the morning, Tam mentioned offhand that her keyring had been moved from the peg by the office door, only a few inches, as if someone had borrowed it and tried to return it to the same place without knowing the habit of her hand. By the time dawn began to seep into the windows, the storm had eased into steady drizzle. The sky was the color of wet stone. Tam checked the road and came back with a grim face. "Culvert's flooded," she said. "Ranger says no one's coming until they can get a truck through." Mid-morning, maybe. Peter exhaled as if trying to push the night out of his lungs. Then we keep ourselves together, he said, and for a moment he sounded like someone who was used to giving orders and being obeyed. Rowan ignored the impulse to bristle. We keep to facts, she said. We don't invent. Elise sat with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. June hovered near her, eyes checking Elise's breathing, her posture. Grant stood by the window, looking toward the lake as if he expected it to explain itself. Silas watched them all, cigarette still unlit, his expression unreadable. Rowan asked Tam to take her to the canoe shed. They went together, both in boots, both with lanterns, even in daylight, because the shed's windows were small and smeared with age. Tam unlocked the padlock, this time fully, and opened the doors. The air inside was colder than outside, damp and wood-heavy. Lorna lay as they had left her, but the morning light made everything more blunt, less theatrical. The bruise line at her hairline was clearer. So was the shape of the overturned rack. Rowan crouched again at the threshold and scanned. Her mind moved in careful circles. What belonged here? What didn't? What was out of place? A wooden mallet lay near the workbench, the kind used to set dock posts or tap stubborn boards into place. Its handle was worn smooth. The head was darkened from use. Rowan did not touch it. She looked at it and looked away. The camp had always used what it had. It would not have needed a weapon brought from outside. Near the workbench sat a plastic bucket half filled with water. It was meant for rinsing oarlocks, Tam had said once, for washing lake grit from metal. A thin film of pine pollen floated on the surface like pale dust. The water smelled of lake and metal. Rowan leaned in, careful, and breathed it in. That smell was on the matchbook. She straightened slowly and looked around again. Something on the floor near the rack caught her eye. A tiny scrap of waxed paper, folded and stuck to a damp board. It was the wrapper from a hard candy, the kind that came in bowls at old check-in desks. The paper was slightly wet, but it repelled the water rather than absorbing it. Rowan felt the pieces settle. A soaked matchbook could be carried without wetting a pocket much if it were wrapped like this, placed quickly, then found, before the wrapper had time to leak or leave a stain. The waxed paper would keep the pocket dry. Rowan pointed her lantern at the rack above Lorna. A strap held one canoe's side in place. The strap had a slight fray at one edge, new and clean compared to the worn fabric. A cut that hadn't been there last night? Rowan's throat tightened. That wasn't cut before, she said. Tam leaned in, her jaw hard. No, she said. That's fresh. Someone came back, Rowan murmured. Tam's eyes went to the padlock. No one should have keys but me, she said, and yet the certainty in her voice wavered. Rowan looked up at the rack and pictured the canoe slipping, pictured the weight of it shifting, pictured Lorna's body beneath it. It's not only staging, Rowan said. It's a warning. They returned to the mess hall where the others were waiting with the brittle patience of people who knew they couldn't leave. Rowan asked to see Lorna's paperwork. What paperwork? Peter asked quickly. Rowan met his gaze. The camp business she mentioned, she said. Receipts, notes, anything. Silas's cigarette stopped tapping. Elise's hands tightened around her mug. June's eyes flicked to Peter's ring. Tam nodded toward the small office off the kitchen. She kept a binder in there, Tam said, for donations and supplies. She said it helped her feel organized. Rowan went into the office with Tam. A binder sat on the desk, thick with printed pages and envelope flaps. Lorna's handwriting labeled the spine, Weekend Ledger. Rowan opened it and turned pages carefully. Donations, pledges, receipts, a list of attendees and their cabin assignments. A note in the margin. Talk to Peter before breakfast. Bring copies. Rowan's pulse steadied into focus. At the back of the binder was a receipt stub for marine rope and hardware. The date was a week old. The purchaser line read, Camp Treasurer Account. Rowan held the stub up. Peter, she said, voice low. Tam's face tightened. He ordered this, she asked. The account did, Rowan replied. The binder's last section had torn rings and jagged paper edges. A page had been ripped out. Rowan stared at the tier and thought of hands moving quietly through rooms at night, thought of someone trying a handle. She closed the binder and carried it out. Silas stood as soon as he saw it. That's evidence, he said, not to be helpful but to claim a story. Rowan didn't answer him. She held up the rope receipt. Who knew about this purchase? She asked the group. Peter's thumb rubbed his wedding band until the skin beneath reddened. "It's camp supplies," he said. "We needed rope. Tam said the old bell rope was frayed." Tam's head snapped up. "I didn't tell you that," she said. Peter's eyes flicked. "Lorna did," he corrected quickly. "Lorna did," Rowan thought. The dead were very useful to people who needed convenient conversations. Rowan looked at the others. "Lorna planned to confront someone," she said, "before breakfast." Elise's eyes closed briefly, as if bracing. "She told me," Elise admitted. "She said she was tired of being everyone's cheerleader while someone siphoned the camp dry." Peter's jaw clenched. "That's not." Rowan cut him off gently. "We're not accusing," she said. "Not yet. We're understanding." Grant's coin rolled once, twice, then stopped. "Lorna accused me," he said harshly, "years ago of not paying back a loan. She always liked being right." June's gaze flicked to him. "Did you argue with her last night?" she asked. Grant's face reddened. "Yes," he snapped. "I did. By the lake path, but I didn't," he swallowed. "I didn't kill her." Rowan watched him. The anger felt real, but it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like a man who had always been judged by a story he didn't write. Silas leaned forward. "Lorna told me the camp has a past scandal," he said, voice soft. "Something buried. Something she said she'd clean up." Tam's eyes narrowed. "You're not here for nostalgia," she said. Silas's mouth curved. "I'm here because nostalgia is a mask," he replied. "People do their worst under masks." Rowan didn't like him, but she listened, because sometimes the worst person in a room still told the truth by accident. Outside, a canoe strap creaked in Rowan's memory, the sound too small to be a threat and yet sharp with intention. Someone wanted her to stop looking. By mid-morning, the drizzle had become a fine, relentless rain. The camp was a damp world, wet wood, wet leaves, wet clothes that never quite warmed. The lake looked like a sheet of hammered lead. Tam made a second attempt at the radio. The ranger's voice came through clearer now, strained with weather reports. "Culvert's still high," the ranger said. "If it drops, we can get a unit in. Could be hours." Peter exhaled sharply and glanced at his watch, then remembered the phones locked away, then glanced again as if habit could conjure time. Rowan sat at the long table with a sheet of notebook paper and drew a timeline the way she might draw a map for someone trying to make sense of a traumatic night. "Dinner ended at 8:10, Rowan said aloud. "We know that because Elise mentioned she wanted to start the sing-along at 9 and check the stove clock." Elise nodded without looking up. "From 8:10 to 8:45, Rowan continued, "we were scattered. Lorna went to the lake path with a lantern. Tam and June were at the generator. Elise was gathering songbooks. Grant went outside. Peter was in the office. Silas walked. Silas's cigarette tapped once against his knee. We came to the fire ring around 8:45, Rowan said. We started singing around 8:55. Grant's coin rolled slower now, as if even his hands were tired. "The bell rang once," Rowan said, and her pen paused. "At around 9:18. Not exactly, but roughly. We can estimate because Elise said it was after the third song and she remembers the song order." Elise's lips parted. "It was after Pines and Lanterns," she whispered. "I remember because..." Her voice broke. She swallowed and smoothed her sleeves. "Because Lorna always loved that one." Rowan nodded. "Then we ended around 9:45 and the search began. We found her around 10:05. June's gaze moved from Rowan's face to her hands and back again. "So she could have died any time between 8:10 and 10:05, she said. "Not exactly," Rowan replied. "The bell is meant to suggest she was alive after 9. That's the point. It anchors memory to a sound." Silas leaned forward slightly. "To force an alibi," he murmured. Rowan didn't look at him. "Yes," she said, "to make you say later with confidence, 'I heard the bell at 9. We were all together. Therefore, no one could have killed her after 9. Peter's thumb rubbed his ring until it looked sore. "Or," he said too quickly, "it was just the wind." Tam's voice was flat. "Wind doesn't pull a line tied around a bench," she said. Rowan's eyes went to June. "You said you found the matchbook in Grant's pocket," she said. "When?" June's expression remained composed. "When we came back from the canoe shed," she said. "Grant was looking for his keys. He was frantic. I offered to help." Grant's jaw clenched. "I didn't ask you," he said. June's eyes softened slightly. "No," she said, "but you didn't stop me." Rowan nodded. It was a small detail, but small details mattered. "Did you put your hand in his pocket?" Rowan asked. June hesitated. I asked, she said. He nodded. Grant opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. He looked away. Rowan tapped her pen against the paper. And you say the matchbook was there, she said. June lifted her chin. It was, she said. Rowan reached into her bag and brought out the waxed candy wrapper Tam had let her keep in a plastic bag. She held it up. This was in the canoe shed, Rowan said, near Lorna's body. It's waxed. It repels water. June's eyes flicked to it. Not much, just enough. The matchbook smelled like lake water, Rowan continued. Not just rain. It was soaked, likely in the shed bucket, and wrapped so it could be planted in a dry pocket. Grant's face went pale. So someone put it there, he said, voice low. Rowan nodded. Someone wanted you to look guilty, she said. Grant's hands clenched. The coin disappeared into his fist like a swallowed secret. Elise looked up, her eyes bright. Why me? She whispered, and it was unclear whether she meant why she was here at the camp or why she was alive when Lorna was not. Rowan's gaze went to Peter. The rope receipt, the torn ledger page, the bell line spliced too neatly. The way Peter had said earlier, without being told, it was marine rope. The way he'd assumed Tam had complained about fraying when she hadn't. Rowan's mind reached for motive and found it in the binder note. Talk to Peter before breakfast. Bring copies. Lorna had been ready to make something public. Rowan turned to Elise. Lorna told you she was going to expose financial misconduct, she said. Elise's shoulders slumped. She said she'd found receipts that didn't match, Elise said. She said the camp wasn't just struggling, it was being bled. June's eyes narrowed. Who had access? She asked. Peter's mouth tightened. That's ridiculous, he said. I'm treasurer. I keep the books. That doesn't mean. Rowan watched him carefully. What brand of rope was delivered? She asked casually. Peter answered without thinking. Sabeline, he said. Silence spread across the table. Tam's head tilted. How do you know that? She asked. Peter blinked, and for the first time his thumb stopped rubbing his ring. It was on the label, he said quickly. Anyone could have seen it. Rowan's voice stayed gentle. Tam said the coil was delivered before we arrived, she said, and she swapped it in a hurry. You weren't with her. Peter's throat bobbed. Lorna told me, he said. Lorna told me, Rowan thought. The dead were very useful to people who needed convenient conversations. Rowan stood and walked to the bell tower. Rain dampened her hair. The ground was soft underfoot. The thin pull line still lay half buried, subtle but present. She crouched near where the line looped around the log bench and rubbed a finger along the cord's braid without tugging it. Green synthetic fibers clung to her fingertip, tiny, almost invisible. When she returned inside, she looked at Peter's cuffs. At the fabric of his sweatshirt sleeve, where his hand had been rubbing his ring, a faint green synthetic thread clung there, caught in the knit. Rowan did not point it out yet. Not aloud, because an accusation without proof was just another story. And someone in this camp was very good at stories. Rowan waited until the rain eased again, until the sky shifted from lead to a washed, uncertain gray. It was not calm, but it was quieter, as if the camp were holding its breath. She gathered everyone at the fire ring. We're going to do something simple, Rowan said. We're going to sit where we sat last night. Same seats, same order. No one stands. No one leaves. We stay still. Peter frowned. This is pointless, he said. It's not, Rowan replied. It's controlled. Tam stood with arms crossed, her palms leaving damp prints on her jeans as she wiped them. I'll watch the tower rope, she said, voice hard. Elise carried her guitar but did not play. She sat and smoothed her sleeves, her eyes fixed on the ground as if she couldn't look at the tower again. June sat beside Elise, posture alert. Grant sat on the far side, jaw clenched. Silas settled with a slight smile, as if he enjoyed being part of a scene. Peter took his seat with stiff reluctance, his thumb immediately finding his ring. Rowan walked the perimeter of the ring slowly, as if checking nothing. In truth, she looked at the ground pull line's path, at the way it threaded beneath needles and surfaced near one bench leg. She took a pinch of pale chalk dust from the pocket of her rain jacket, taken from Tam's tool shed, used to mark cuts in wood, and tapped it lightly onto the cord where it lay exposed. The dust clung to the wet braid, pale against green. Then Rowan stepped back and addressed them. Lorna loved tradition, Rowan said, voice carrying in the damp clearing. So let's use tradition. Peter, she put you in charge of details. You keep saying you know how she ran things. Lead the night bell the way she would. Peter stiffened. I'm not. Do it, Rowan said quietly, if only to honor her. Silas's eyes gleamed slightly. Elise's hands tightened around her guitar case handle. June's gaze sharpened. Peter cleared his throat. His thumb rubbed his ring. He stared at the tower as if it might absolve him. The night bell, he said, voice formal. It means we're together. It means we remember. His foot shifted. Just a small adjustment, the kind people made without thinking when they were uncomfortable. His boot heels scraped against the wet needles near the bench leg. The thin pull line tightened almost imperceptibly. The bell rang. Once. The sound fell over them like a curtain. Grant's head snapped up. Elise flinched. June went still. Tam's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped near her temple. Rowan didn't move at all. She watched Peter. Peter's face went blank for a fraction of a second, not surprise, recognition. Then he forced a laugh that landed badly. There, he said, too loud. See? Wind, maybe the line. Rowan held up a hand. Don't, she said, and her voice was calm enough to be frightening. She stepped forward and pointed at his boot sole. A smear of pale chalk dust clung to the wet rubber, caught in the tread pattern. Peter looked down and his thumb stopped rubbing his ring. You pulled the line, Rowan said, without standing, without leaving. That's how the bell rang last night while all of us were here. Peter's throat worked. I didn't. Rowan's gaze stayed steady. You didn't mean to just now, she said. That's the point. You knew it was there. Your body remembered how to use it. Silas exhaled softly, almost pleased. Grant stared at Peter with dawning fury. Elise's eyes filled, not with tears yet, but with the pressure that preceded them. June's gaze sharpened into something colder than professionalism. Tam spoke, voice low. That line wasn't there last month, she said. I'd have tripped on it. Rowan nodded. It was spliced into the new rope, she said. Tam replaced the lower section yesterday at Lorna's request. But she didn't splice a second line. Someone else did. Someone who wanted a bell that could be rung from this ring. Peter's mouth opened. Closed. His thumb rubbed his ring once more, hard enough to hurt. Rowan took a slow breath. Now we talk about the rest, Rowan said. About Lorna's ledger. She held up the receipt stub for marine rope and hardware. Purchased on the camp treasurer account, she said. That's you, Peter. Peter's eyes darted. It's camp business, he said. Supplies. Routine. Rowan's voice stayed level. Lorna tore a page out of this binder, she said. A page she meant to bring copies of to confront you. She wrote a note. Talk to Peter before breakfast. Bring copies. Peter's face reddened. You don't know what that was, he said. Rowan's gaze lifted to the bell tower and then back to him. You killed her before breakfast could happen, she said. Elise made a sound like a choked breath. Grant's fists clenched. June's shoulders squared. Peter's voice rose. That's... Rowan held up the waxed wrapper. The matchbook was soaked in lake water, she said. Likely in the canoe shed bucket. It was wrapped so it could be planted in a dry pocket without soaking it. June found it in Grant's jacket during the chaos of the search. June's chin lifted. I didn't plant it, she said. Rowan looked at her. I don't think you did, she said, but you touched the pocket. You can tell us how it appeared. June's eyes flicked to Peter's hands. Grant's pocket was empty when I first checked, she said slowly. I checked once, nothing. Then, she swallowed. Then Peter brushed past us, said he was looking for the radio. After that, the matchbook was there. Peter's head snapped toward her. That's a lie, he hissed. June's voice remained controlled. I don't lie about what I feel with my hands, she said. Rowan turned back to Peter. You had opportunity, she said. During the free time window when Lorna was alone at the canoe shed, you had a weapon on site, a mallet, a dock tool. You had motive, she was going to expose missing funds. And you had method, use tradition to manufacture an alibi. Peter's thumb rubbed his ring so hard the skin shone. And when you sensed we were seeing through it, Rowan continued, you went back and cut a canoe strap. A warning, a way to remind us the shed could kill without looking like murder. Tam's eyes went flinty. You went back into my shed, she said, voice trembling with anger. Peter's face tightened. You don't have proof, he said. Rowan looked at him with something like sadness. You mean beyond the bell line you just pulled, she said. Beyond the receipt, beyond the planted matchbook, beyond your knowledge of rope brands and details you weren't told. Silas spoke softly. Beyond the fact that you couldn't stop yourself from touching your ring when you lied, he said. Peter whirled on him. Shut up, he snapped. Rowan lifted a hand again. "We're not done," she said. She reached into her pocket and produced a small evidence bag Tam had given her from the tool shed, empty, meant for screws, now holding a single thing, a short length of green synthetic fiber Rowan had plucked from the pull line. "This braid sheds fibers," Rowan said. "You've been handling it. It's on your cuff. It's on the seam of your sweatshirt." She didn't touch him. She didn't need to. "And you're the only person here whose role intersects with both money and rope, treasurer, purchaser, authority." Peter's chest rose and fell quickly. For the first time, his thumb stopped. Rain began again, soft and steady. The bell tower dripped. Rowan watched Peter's face and saw something shift. Not remorse, not grief, but calculation, as if he were still searching for a story that could hold. They moved inside the mess hall because the campfire ring had done its work, and because the rain made everything colder. The group sat at the long table, not like friends, but like jurors with no court. Tam tried the radio again. The ranger's voice came through with more urgency now. "Water's dropping," the ranger said. "Deputies can try in an hour or two." Peter stood near the door, as if he wanted an exit to be part of his body's options. Rowan kept her voice low and steady. "We wait," she said, "and we don't let anyone leave alone." Grant's jaw clenched. "I'll make sure," he said. Elise stared at the table's wood grain as if it might become a prayer. June sat upright, hands folded, eyes fixed on Peter with the quiet intensity of someone who had learned to watch for the moment a patient or a liar cracked. Silas looked almost disappointed that the story was turning into logistics. Peter's thumb found his ring again. It rubbed. Rowan watched the motion and remembered the way Lorna had said the day before that she needed things steadied. The weekend had not been only nostalgia. It had been a stage for confrontation, for reckoning. "Why her?" Rowan asked quietly. Peter laughed once, harshly. "Why do you think?" He snapped. "She was going to ruin me." The words landed with a sick finality. Elise's head lifted sharply. Grant made a sound in his throat like a growl. June's face tightened. Peter realized what he had said and tried to pull it back with his mouth, but it was too late. The camp, once you spoke into it, remembered. Rowan's voice stayed calm. "She was going to expose theft," she said. Peter's eyes flashed. "You don't know what it takes to keep a place like this alive," he said. "You don't know the phone calls, the liability forms, the donors who want their name on a plaque and then vanish. You think nostalgia pays for roof repairs?" Tam's hands curled on the table edge. "So you stole from it," she said, voice flat. Peter's jaw worked. "Borrowed," he corrected. "I made it work. I kept the lights on." Silas leaned forward, cigarette forgotten. "And Lorna found the paper trail," he murmured. Peter glared at him. "She found what she wanted to find," he snapped. "She loved being righteous. She loved being the hero." Elise's voice came out small. "She loved this place," she said. Peter's face twisted. "So do I," he said, and for a moment there was something almost raw in his tone. "But she wanted me gone. She wanted a confession at breakfast. She wanted my signature on a resignation letter like it was a camp craft project." June's eyes narrowed. "So you went to the canoe shed," she said. Peter's thumb stopped. His shoulders rose and fell. "I went to talk," he said, and his voice suddenly was tired. "I went to tell her she didn't understand, that she couldn't just tear something down because she wanted to feel clean." Grant's voice was low. "And when she didn't agree," he said, "you hit her." Peter's eyes flicked to Grant, and a grim smile appeared. "It wasn't supposed to be." He swallowed. "She was angry. She was shouting. She grabbed at the ledger, at my pocket, like she could pull the truth out of me by force. She called me a thief." Tam's laughter was sharp and bitter. She asked. Peter's gaze dropped to the table. "I took money," he admitted, and the words sounded as if they hurt his teeth. "I told myself I'd repay it. I told myself it was temporary. Then it got easier. Then it got normal." Rowan felt a cold steadiness settle in her chest. This was the part of every confession people forgot, the ordinariness, the way wrongdoing became routine until it didn't feel like wrongdoing at all. "And then," Rowan said softly, "you made yourself an alibi." Peter's eyes lifted. His voice returned to something like defense. "I didn't know what else to do," he said. "If they came, if they looked, if they found the ledger." "So you used the camp," Rowan said. "You used its traditions. You turned nostalgia into a weapon." Peter flinched, and that was the closest he came to shame. Rowan laid the chain out one last time, for the sake of clarity, for the sake of the story being provable, and not just felt. "You ordered marine rope and hardware through the treasurer account," she said. Lorna had Tam replace the lower bell rope section with it because she didn't want anyone hurt during the bell ceremony. But you, or someone acting for you, spliced a secondary pull line to that new braid, routed it under the needles, and looped it around the fire ring bench where a foot could pull it. Peter's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "During the free time window," Rowan continued, "when Lorna was alone at the canoe shed, you confronted her. The shed held a mallet used for dock posts, a blunt tool already there. One strike is all it takes to turn an argument into stillness." Elise pressed her palms flat to the table as if grounding herself. "Afterward," Rowan said, "you staged time. You rang the bell once during the sing-along while everyone was together, so we would all remember it, and so the bell would suggest Lorna was alive later than she was. All in a sis." Silas's eyes were on Rowan now, intent. "Then you planted Lorna's soaked matchbook into Grant's jacket pocket," Rowan said. "Not bare, because it would have soaked the fabric. Wrapped in waxed paper from a candy wrapper. The matchbook smelled of lake water because it had been soaked in the canoe shed rinse bucket. It was meant to make Grant look like he'd been at the shed." Grant's face tightened, anger and relief mingling in an ugly way. "You left the shed padlock hanging but unlatched," Rowan said. "A prop. A suggestion of outsider hands. And when you realized we were noticing the rope route and the ledger, you went back and cut a canoe strap to remind us the shed could accident someone else if we pushed." Tam's voice was steady now, cold. "You came back into my shed," she said. "You used my keys." Peter's gaze flicked to her, then away. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, the rain eased again, as if the world were tired of pressing. The ranger's voice crackled through the radio from the counter. "Units coming in," the ranger said. "Road's passable now. 10 minutes." Peter straightened as if he might still try to walk away. Grant rose too, blocking the door with his body. Tam stepped beside him, not touching, but present like a locked gate. "Don't," Rowan said to Peter, quietly. "You've already made the camp do enough work for you." For a moment, Peter looked at the floor, at the damp boot prints on the wood, at the mess hall like a place he'd believed belonged to him. Then his shoulders sagged. When the deputies arrived, they came in with wet jackets and cautious eyes, as if they expected the camp to reach up and grab them. Tam handed over the rope receipt. Rowan handed over her notes. June, terse and precise, told them what her hands had felt in Grant's pocket and when. Elise, pale but steady, confirmed Lorna's plan to confront Peter at breakfast. Even Silas spoke reluctantly about what Lorna had said to him. Camp scandal, cleanup, the need to stop someone bleeding it dry. They led Peter out without drama. His wedding band flashed once in the gray light, and then he was gone into the wet pines. Afterward, the camp seemed to exhale. Rowan walked alone to the bell tower. The ground pull line lay where it had lain all weekend, disguised among needles as if it were a natural thing. Rowan crouched, slid her fingers under it, and lifted it gently. The braid was slick with rain. The splice point was still too clean, too deliberate. She let it fall back to the ground. Beyond the trees, the lake breathed against its shore, steady and indifferent. The pines moved in a soft wind. Somewhere, a cabin door creaked on its hinges. Rowan looked up at the bell and thought about how easily a sound could become evidence in a human mind, how ritual could be mistaken for truth, how memory could be choreographed. Lorna had brought them here to remember. Someone else had brought them here to control what remembering meant. Rowan stood in the damp clearing and listened, not for the bell, but for the quiet beneath it. The camp did not speak. It did not accuse. It only held what people gave it, songs, rules, promises, and sometimes the shape of a lie.